Hello, my friends, and welcome. My name's Kelly Weiler, and I am an artist who lives in Zanesville, Ohio. I am also an art coach where I teach weekly inside the Creators Club, which is an online art membership group. I specialize in the intuitive painting process. I feel like intuitive painting is pretty much the secret sauce to you finding your very own fingerprint. It's like a roadmap where you're going to discover all these things that are yours and only yours when it comes to creating and painting. Whether you're a beginner or you've been painting for many years, or if you've not even picked up a brush yet, it is inclusive to all levels. I think you're going to enjoy this start to finish art study that I have prepared for you. So the very first thing I want you to do is to go for a walk or find a way to just bring a little bit of calmness to your mind. Go for a walk, notice the things around you. Do you smell the honeysuckle? Do you see the bees working on the flowers diligently? If you do not have the ability to go for a walk, what about sitting in your favorite place at your home? It could be your front porch, your back porch, or just a corner in your home. Notice things around you. Do you have plants around you? Notice the butterflies. Notice the birds singing. Do you see your pets? Are they out in the yard? Can you just kind of sit in that moment for just a few moments before you get started? As I start my first step here with the intuitive process, I like to just grab my oil pastels and allow myself to do some free movements. This is where I am just letting words flow. This is where I find myself sometimes in a state of prayer. Sometimes I'm in gratitude. Sometimes I am just making marks and scribbling and letting my body move the way it naturally needs to. This is a process where my brain is shifting from the left side to the right side, which is our creative side of the brain. This is where we're going to have that flow that the artist tries so hard to find. We are always trying to get in that flow. And then lastly, the oil pastels that I'm using is going to cause a little bit of a resistance so that when I add layers on top of it, it'll still peek through just slightly, giving this painting a little bit of history. I'm now using a fan brush and I'm still making marks, using the mister, letting the drips just go. And now I have a paint blade, and again, I'm just still making movements, letting my body flow. This is where you should be having fun. Allow yourself to play. Allow yourself to be on a little bit of an adventure. I'm using the corner of my tool. I'm still making marks with that, with the silicone blade. Constantly flipping that canvas around as I am putting everything into motion. Notice now I've grabbed a shaper tool, and these are great again for mark making. I'm writing inside this painting, putting more history, putting just more little little added movements and little details inside the base of this painting. If there's anything on your mind, you can just release it right here. I'm using a brayer just to soften all those edges up right now. Okay, so next I chose to grab my paint knife and some metallic copper, still making just different movements, different marks using these different tools. The brayer smooths it out just a little bit, again giving it more texture, more depth, more history to this bottom layer of the painting. I like to give myself just a little bit of time throughout a painting where I step back away from it and just study it a little bit. And while I do that, I stretch and I just kind of keep myself back in that kind of peaceful mode where I am able to just not get caught up in my thoughts too much. Okay, I'm back for my second session on this painting, and notice I'm grabbing those warmer colors now. If you're a beginner, a very, very simple way to remember when you're layering your paints is not to mix your cool and your warm colors while they're wet. So this painting completely dry now. I'm coming back in with warm colors. Again, more mark making, but only I'm using brushes this time. And for some reason, I keep noticing throughout this painting, I'm kind of making these cross hatch movements. And this is kind of interesting because I often find myself mostly making circular movements. So here, this is probably the second time I've noticed that I do more of a cross hatch movement. So this is something that you're going to find when you start creating with intuitive paintings. This is what I mean by finding your own personal fingerprint, is you will notice similarities after you do several paintings of different marks that you make that are consistent in your paintings, which is what is going to make your paintings unique, and you're going to have your own little fingerprint, your own stamp, or some people call their artistic voice. Even as I use my fingers, I'm still kind of using that crosshatch movement. So I just found that quite interesting, that this has been probably my second or third one in the row where I've used this consistent movement more and more dominantly. Adding more warm colors. So I'm adding another deeper color here, but still you'll notice it's still a warm tone. So using those warm tones, I'm sure that these colors are going to be really vibrant. I'm not going to dull the colors down by turning my painting into kind of a muddy look. That's what they mean when they say you have mud, is when you are mixing colors that are cool and warm while they're still wet. So even now I'm going in with some lighter shades, purpley tones, but there's still enough red or warm pigment into that color that it's not creating mud. So right now I'm adding some cool colors, and I'm being very careful because I know it's very wet. So you'll notice right now as I'm layering the green that I'm not blending it, so that paint's going to be on there pretty thick. And I'm using my knife as I do this. So if I was to blend this very much into those warmer colors, I may end up with a little bit of mud. So I'm being very careful as I add those layers not to overblend. So I'm just taking a moment while the layers of paint are drying, and I like to just observe and flip that canvas around. At this point, I may take photos of the canvas so that I could just give myself a different perspective. There are times also where I may turn that photo into a black and white photo so that I can just simply see contrast. And that black and white photo will tell me a little bit about where I need to go. Now I'm going in and just adding some circular motions. This is something that I do quite often in many of my paintings, and I kind of discovered this through just this in mark making and intuitive kind of painting, that I noticed that I like to do a lot of circular motions. You'll notice now that I'm using my hands, I feel like I'm seeing marks that actually are reminding me of birds in flight, actually, is what I'm seeing. And so I'm using my hands. I often do this as I'm trying to plan out what the final composition is going to be, or at least it helps direct me. And so I feel as though I know where I'm going with this. I'm seeing a little bit of a shape that reminds me of a bird, and you could actually turn this into any kind of bird that is meaningful to you. I have been painting quite a few hummingbirds lately, and so I naturally gravitate towards that. You will notice that when you're painting, a lot of times you'll notice yourself going towards some of the similar themes or subject matter, and that is part of what's going to bring out your fingerprint. That's part of who you are as a painter. So I highly recommend that you push into that. Don't fight that. Just go with it. There are several things that I find myself painting. As far as birds go, I paint quite a few owls, hummingbirds. I paint a lot of sunflowers, so you will see that these things show up quite often in your paintings. This is part of who you are as an artist. So gravitate towards it, push into that, and try to figure out ways of making that your own. What is it that you can do? If you're painting a bird, if you're painting a hummingbird, what is it that you can do that makes it unique to you and your own style? So now that I know a little bit about where I'm going with this painting, I know right now that it's going to be a hummingbird. So I'm creating a little bit of a wash, and I am doing what is called negative painting. And what that does is it just helps bring that shape out of the bird, and it's going to calm some of that background area for me a little bit as I work and as I come forward. Now, creating a wash, I'm using water now, spraying, using my fingers, spreading it out. I'm keeping it kind of thin because I'm still not sure what I want to leave and what I want to completely cover up yet. So by just doing these light washes, it gives me a little time to work, and it also helps clean my eyes a little bit as I'm working, and so that there's not so much chaos, and I can actually give it more of a focal point. I'm starting to add some shadows here, some drips. Drips are something that, I love. You'll often find a lot of drips in various places throughout the layers of my painting. And there's something about the movement of the water or whatever, if you're using oils, you'll have a different kind of a liquid. But for me, it's with the water in the acrylics or the clay-based paint, and just watching that water flow and allowing those drips to make organic movements on their own. So I am right now just kind of picking out a few areas that I think I want to keep. And so I'm kind of just making, again, some shapes, some circular motions, and I'm going in and doing that negative painting around it so that those bolder colors pop out. And so those bolder colors are kind of coming forward, and the areas where I have added the wash are kind of more set in the background. They're softer. It gives the feeling that it's further away. So this is all part of building this painting, and it's giving me a little bit of a roadmap here as far as where I want my next moves to go. So this is a very exciting part of this painting, and I'm going to end it right here. This is part 1, and I hope you've enjoyed it so far, and I hope you will tune in for part 2, where I finish this to a cohesive, beautiful finish, as well as tips along the way. My goal is to inspire all of you to push yourself into new limits and new adventure, and open your mind a little bit so that you find your very own fingerprint when you create your own art. When the garden won't stop giving